Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm extremely excited to be here today. We have a special conversation. You know, I'm a health and wellness nerd, longtime athlete, love a little bit of fun in the mix, but we have an inspiring human coming. She's got a new book out. Dr. Kristen Bishara is with us. Dr. Bishara, welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to talking to you today.
Yes, we're going to get in. It's Friday out here in Colorado. This will be released at a different date, but we're channeling Friday energy to anyone, wherever you are, whenever you do listen to this. First things first, we're going to give a little love to our sponsors that make it all possible. LuxNeuro. LuxNeuro is offering neurofeedback and counseling where your heart and mind align. For more information about what neurofeedback can do for you, listen to the neurofeedback stories of transformation in the middle of this podcast. Neurofeedback effectively treats everything from insomnia, anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, and much more. Optimize your brain. I got to give a special thank you to Declan James Watches. This is my fitness family. They are veteran owned, former Navy SEAL, and 10% goes back to Navy SEAL Foundation. So please check them out. And today, you know, sometimes I read the bio, sometimes I don't, but Dr. Bishara is out here doing it, varsity human. So we got to go into the details before I let her make her listen to all this. But Dr. Bishara, MD, is the founder of From Within Medical, a medical wellness practice that places emphasis on the mind, body, and gut-brain access to prevent and manage disease. With over 20 years of clinical experience, time and time again, Dr. Bishara has discovered that the connection between these symptoms plays a significant role in disease prevention and management, but it has not been adequately addressed. Consequently, her therapy involves a multidimensional and personalized approach that addresses multiple physical and biological factors while focusing on strengthening the body's immune system. This includes assessment of individual gut health, determination of antioxidant levels, and determination of neurotransmitter deficiencies. The role of aesthetics and beauty complements both body and brain. Her individualized treatments incorporate state-of-the-art non-invasive aesthetic procedures and personalized skin rejuvenation. So inside, outside, whole body approach, whole human approach. Dr. Bishara, welcome to TNT. Let's go.
Thank you.
You got a lot of boxes checked here. We'll dive into all this. I love the mind-body connect. Again, I always talk about the whole human approach because it's never one thing. It's all the things. But I always want to start before we get into all these accomplishments. You're obviously a mission-driven human. Tell us about like young Kristen. I think your personal journey is a beautiful one, weaves into the mission. But tell us about you as a kiddo.
Yeah, very different from who I am now, but I think I needed to take this journey. And so I was an obese young child / teenager, and I got my fair share of bullying when I was in school because, you know, kids aren't really friendly and kind when you're in 5th, 6th grade. But I think that propelled me to really just change everything that I knew was healthy. I was not a good eater. And so at the age of 15, I decided I was going to lose the 70 pounds that I was carrying around. So it was the summer of my 15th birthday, and I just started restricting what I was eating and eating really healthy. And I started to lose weight. And I didn't lose the 70 pounds. I lost about 30 pounds, but it was a good start. But then when I went to medical school, I started really kind of studying pathways of how our body can heal and how our body can utilize different sources of fuel, including fat burning. And then I lost the remainder of the weight, and here I am. But now I want to teach other people, and this is partly why I wrote the book, is your body is really the best doctor, and your body is able to heal. It's able to do anything. It just sometimes doesn't know how to tell us. So I'm here to kind of decode a lot of that stuff for people.
So well said. I love this so much because turmeric and tequila, I was telling before we got on the mic, it's, you know, this seemingly opposing things can harmoniously coexist. And that space between is graceful disruption. And we talk about varsity humans and all these things, but really it's about advocating for yourself and personal responsibility and accountability. I'm very big on this, especially for our young people, because you don't need to be the human that relies on the systems or necessarily the authority telling you what to do. You've got to be responsible for yourself, your body, your own intuition. And I love then when we have our doctors saying just that. Like, you got to listen to your own body and what's going on. When you were young, I mean, it's very fascinating to me. I don't have kids, but I've coached forever, where I can see my young humans, or even myself, where one side of it is the kid sees this breakthrough or something they want to change, and they go and change it, and the other side, they kind of fall deeper into like a depression or doesn't make a change. What do you think for you as a young person that like felt that sense of accountability and took matters into your own hands?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just this frustration, right, of looking different, being different. And I kind of just wanted to blend with everyone else, which is kind of shallow, right? But also, I'm the kind of person that wants to prove somebody else wrong if they tell me I can't do anything. And I think for me, that was the catalyst, because that summer, I visited my pediatrician for a regular wellness visit. And that's when she told me I was 70 pounds overweight. And she said, you're never going to lose that weight. And maybe she knew me like really well and better than I thought I knew myself. And so that for me was the catalyst. I was like, I'm not going to be like this forever. I don't feel good. And I used to get really tired just from walking a few blocks. So I was like, no, I'm not going to live like this. And for me, and I think this is a really important message that you also just mentioned, is it's hard for everyone, right? Life is hard. And I think we've become a society that thinks that other people that are successful or doing other things, that it came so naturally and easily for them. And that's rarely the case. But we don't really talk about that. We don't really talk about struggles and working really hard to get to what we want. But this is a really big message that I think people need to hear, is that even the best athletes, I mean, if you listen to Michael Phelps talking, or Tom Brady, the one thing that they always talk about is overcoming the negativity and consistency. And, you know, if we can all do that, we just need to realize that we're all working hard. It's not just, oh, that other person's got it really easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that really could be its own podcast, because we facilitate these stories in our mind, whether it's victim mentality or, you know, just not being enough, or however you package it. But the reality is, yes, everybody's going through something, and we have these different struggles. And the irony is, the most glorious, beautiful moments, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, Michael Jordan, whomever, it's wild that you only see the glory part. You don't see the 23 hours a day where they're training, obsessing about something, counting their macros, doing all the extra. And then, you know, they reach these peaks, and then they have extreme lows. Every single top athlete talks about their mental health, you know, taking a dive after you train and commit your entire life to this thing. Then you do the thing, and it's like, now what? Like, what do you do? So it's extraordinary humans in extraordinary circumstance. As you said, everyone's battling it in some way. And it's not just about health and nutrition. It could be about your work, your family, anything. What did you have any mental health conversation? Because as a young person, when I read that in your book, to hear that, I remember going to the pediatrician young, and I was always like a bigger bone, thicker kid. I'm Swedish and Norwegian, and we ate McDonald's, you know, there's that, but we were all athletes. So we moved, but I remember the doctor being like, you're heavy for your whatever. And I remember thinking like, dang, am I fat? Like, what do I need to do here? We didn't have mental health. And what did you do mental health wise to like not break down?
You know, I don't know what it was. Maybe I just had that tough person in me. But I also honestly think that the food that I was eating was so much healthier, and I actually felt mentally better too. And I didn't really put two and two together at the time. But again, after I went to medical school, and then just kind of focusing on the gut and how the gut affects our brain and our neurotransmitter production, then it all made sense. I mean, we're making serotonin from precursors in food. We're making other neurotransmitters that affect not only our cognitive function, but our mental health also from food. So for me, I guess I didn't put two and two together at the time.
Yeah.
But now I know that based on science, we're able to increase production of these really important neurotransmitters that we need, right? And I think we've become a society where, unfortunately, we're relying too much on medications. And while there's a place for medications, unfortunately, we've utilized them way too quickly and as a quick fix. And we can't do that. I mean, medications that help with anxiety or depression are only treating the symptoms, and they're not helping your body make more of these neurotransmitters we need. They're only helping your body not break them down as fast. So we need to actually make more of these things. And food is really where it's at. And it's simple as it sounds, but we really are what we eat.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll
Cliche,
unpack.
but it's true.
What's that?
I said it's so cliche, but it's true, right?
Yeah, well, the older you get, the more you're like, damn, that cliche. I should have listened when I was 12. Like it's real. Like I didn't need to do all this schooling. I should have just listened to all the cliches that everyone was telling me. Yes, it's pretty wild. And we're going to unpack the gut brain. I'm a massive advocate for all brain conversation as an athlete with concussions to CTE in the NFL down to like gut brain connect. I mean, the brain is so wildly spoke about and there's such a lack of awareness, and then your gut is the same thing, so we'll unpack that. But before we do that, I'm really big on our young people or anyone that's in that pivot point, or they're about to make a step, or they want to make a step in the right direction of like just making a change. So before they get into the details of like what to do, what is your advice, as now a successful human and someone that made that conscious pivot, for someone like on a day one, they're thinking this is, instead of one day, now it's day one, we're going to do something. What's your first suggestion that they should do right now to make that positive change?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it has nothing to do with gut health. I think they need to change the mindset that they have. Negative thoughts are our worst enemy. Mm-hmm. And you change that mindset, even with just visualizing. I mean, athletes talk about this all the time, right? Visualize your goal, visualize what you want, visualize being successful, and it'll start happening. And you just have to make a mindful effort to keep doing that daily. And it makes such a difference. My son is a runner, and of course, kids don't listen to their parents. I probably shouldn't even be saying this. He's going to be mad at me, but he didn't listen to me at all. And he wasn't really one of the fastest on his team, but he started really focusing on the visualization of winning and the mindset, and he almost became obsessive about it. Okay. But then he changed his diet a little bit, and he started asking me nutrition questions, and he made such a huge improvement in his running times and just confidence. And he's like, you know what, Mom, I think you were right. Hey. And it was little simple steps. That's the other thing I want to focus on, is work on your mindset, but it's little steps daily, right? Which make a big difference, I think. So do those two things first.
There you
Don't even worry about the diet yet.
Yeah, steps not straight. Mindset's so big. And sometimes I'm an eternally optimistic, but I also have like this other juxtaposition realist side. Like as an athlete, like you're never training enough. You can study more. You can make more money. You can always do more. Like it's never really enough. Even when the whole being enough conversation's a thing, it's still there. So I have to consistently be aware of what I'm thinking and any sort of negative beliefs that are there, even though I don't think they're there. It's like this consistent awareness, because the mindset, it supersedes all the things. And then if you can eat well, like that can actually facilitate correct hormones and less tired. Like that can help not being depressed and everything else. So it does kind of work all together. It
really does. It really does. And I think, again, I think it's just like a societal thing. We've just been tricked to believe that health is so much more complicated than it really is. Mm-hmm. And success is so much more complicated. It's really not. It's really just small steps. If you listen to most successful people, most successful athletes, it'll be these little habits that they've incorporated, and they are consistent about them. And that's really what makes the difference.
There you go. Yeah, the things that I've always like, well, God, I need to unpack that in therapy. But I'm like, also some of these obsessive things where it's never enough. I don't fully hate that, because it keeps the fire burning. It's Absolutely. The chip on the shoulder. It's all the things. You got to keep it balanced, but it's there. And like, I don't hate those things, because like those are my high drivers. Those are like my high achievers. Like that's what keeps it going. And I will say, even if your son's not listening, to all the parents out there, they are watching. I don't have kids again, but as a coach, I always say, I'm like, dude, I promise you, your kids seem like they're not listening, but you are their first influencer, and they're watching the way you move through the world. So that's amazing that he listened, but he started to ask questions. That's huge. He knew that you were the resource that knew and went through. And like, obviously you're a professional and you've got the book, but kids,
you're still their mom or dad, right?
Yeah.
You're nobody to them. Yeah. What do you know, Mom?
Exactly. Well, then you grow up and you find out your parents, also didn't know as much as you thought. And you're like, okay, I was kind of right.
That's true too. I think like it's vice versa. Or like we put our parents on a pedestal, like they know everything.
Totally.
And they don't know everything. They're just kind of trying things out, as they go along too.
Totally. Well, and the upside of our humans even questioning that, because I do say question it, question this podcast, question me, question everything, because you should. They're connected. Like the upside of social media is info's accessible, and they're pretty conscious consumers. And that's why I believe in facilitating conversation, holding space like this podcast, where they can have, 30 to 60 minutes of intellectual conversation of just get some intel, and then you can go dig in deeper to what you want, versus like these quick 5 to 10 second, infomercials of like information that doesn't really tell you the whole truth. They know how to dig in. So on that note, let's jump into this. I am halfway through. I tried to get it done before I hate when interviewers get on, they're like, yeah, I read the book. And you're like, no, you didn't. So I like to be transparent that I will definitely read this. If you listen to my show, you know, I'm a health nerd and I love even the business side of it, because that's a whole cardio situation. But this book is so great because this is a complex conversation. We're going to unpack it now. And if you're new to this or it feels overwhelming, Dr. Bishara does a phenomenal job of taking little inserts of each chapter and putting it in an itemized list where it's not overwhelming. You can take key takeaways. So it's not, you don't have to have a medical degree to navigate this. So why don't you tell us on like, why was this so important now to get out there of all the things that we're dealing with in this world, especially in health and wellness?
Yeah. I think for me, the really big driver of writing the book was COVID and what we saw in COVID, that there were certain people getting really sick and people couldn't pinpoint who was getting really sick and who wasn't. But what we did know is that children weren't getting sick, right? And so we published a study on why children weren't getting sick. And it was really based on the fact that their microbiome is set up for them to have the most potent immune system early on. And that's what really protected them, is the fact that they had certain bacteria in their immune system that a lot of us lose over time. And it protected them because it worked on the same inflammatory pathways that COVID affected. So many people didn't realize that the gut played the biggest role, in my opinion, and a lot of other doctors' opinions, in COVID severity. And I was just, I was really surprised, but also frustrated from my colleagues, other physicians, who really dismissed the gut as an important factor in our immune system. And so that's really what kind of drove me to write the book, is that I guess people really don't know as much as I think they know. Because I think when you're immersed in your own little world of whatever you know, you just assume that everyone else kind of knows that stuff too.
Yeah.
But apparently we all really need to just get more information on gut health, because it's not something that we learn in medical school, unfortunately, not enough anyway. So I think all doctors are in the same boat. And if all doctors are in the same boat, then some people who aren't doctors probably know more than doctors. So I really felt like this was a book that really needed to be out there and talk about.
It's huge. Yes. I mean, a couple of things on this. I've done a few knee surgeries, just being a longtime athlete and whatever. And even some of the diets or like nutrition they would suggest, I was like, are you serious? This whole thing is like inflammatory or hospital food. It's like cake and, you know, preservatives and like canned I mean, it's just so ironic that, you know, in medical school, nutrition's not a piece of it, or maybe it's like one course. But then again, you need to be into the minutia of, you know, knee reconstruction, or, I mean, I get why it's just so much to know that as consumers, as humans, we need to advocate for ourselves, but this is so massive. And I want to know, as a business person, why do you think other doctors weren't talking about this? Because that bifidobacteria, what's it called? That goes with
bacteria. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was reading that ketos have it, they're fine. Why was no one talking about that? Because that's not even that deep of a conversation.
You want the honest opinion?
Absolutely.
It's free. There's no money to be made on eating healthy, eating yogurt, eating foods that contain this bacteria. And it's given free to children as gifts from nature to protect them early on, because they don't have exposure to everything in the environment. So their immune system's still growing, but it's almost like they get this boost, right? This present that they're given. And unfortunately, over time, we eat like crap. And like you said, I mean, even the hospital food has garbage in it, which I'm shocked. And this is something we really need to change. But over time, we start to lose this really important bacteria. And we need to start going back to the way that our ancestors ate, and even the way that we ate 100 years ago. We were much healthier 100 years ago than we are now. I mean, cancer rates are rising, autoimmune rates are rising, obesity rates are rising. It's crazy. So we really need to go back to the root.
Well, and I thank you for your transparency, because there's a health and wellness conversation always, but before that, there's a business conversation. And I always tell people, if you're not motivated to get healthy, get motivated to not get fleeced or sold or used or be the commodity, because you are quite literally the gerbil on the wheel. If you're not asking questions and just taking medications or signing up for this, like, you've got to advocate for yourself. And it's a business first. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. And I think even the generations before us, like, the doctors know, and they'll tell you this. And I'm like, okay. And like, they do know, but you got to find the right doctors. Just like you need the right athletic coach. Like, not every coach is a great coach. You got to find the right ones. So this is really cool. And again, I don't want people to be overwhelmed or like intimidated, because like gut health can get very much into like the science and some of the terms. I'm like sounding it out loud and saying it slow, and I'm like, whatever, we'll skip to the next thing.
There's a glossary in the back you can always go back to too. Yeah.
I saw that, but I was just, we're getting like the meat and potatoes of it. And I like the tools. That's why I love that you put it in like digestible, no pun intended, notes of like, here's the takeaways, because it is a lot to know. But if you can take just the heart of the things and like the main takeaways, I think it's enough to make positive changes. What do you say is like the first thing, kind of like making a pivot in your life? What's the first thing people should do if they want to make a positive change in their gut health?
I mean, there are a few things, and they're all pretty simple things, but I guess if we were to just kind of pick one thing, is just incorporate more vegetables into your diet. It's really that simple. And the reason being is you're eating vegetables for them, and them is those trillions of organisms that are living inside of you in your gut that actually feed on that stuff. They digest that stuff, they ferment it, and then they make products out of it, like neurotransmitters, like vitamins, like all these amazing things. So if you're not feeding the good guys in the gut what they need to eat, they're going to die off, and then they're going to be replaced by the harmful bacteria that love processed foods and all that garbage. So it doesn't have to be overnight and you're like, going into like completely perfect diet. It's really just start incorporating more plant-based foods into your diet slowly. That's it. If I were to say one other thing, I would say just restrict your eating times to, 14 hours, or, even 12 hours is better than eating all day long. But we've seen that people who eat within a restricted time period and don't eat 3 hours before they sleep, they have a lower incidence of getting these precancerous lesions in their colon that can lead to cancer. So we need to give our gut that time of rest. Our gut has other functions, and if we're constantly digesting, it's not going to work on that other stuff. It's going to get backed up, and it's going to be not pretty. So restrict eating times and just incorporate more plant-based. Easy, right?
Yes, very easy. And usually we just add in, you naturally start to filter out. It's like walking more during the day. You're going to sleep better because you're tired. Anyways, those are great, easy tips. And I want to unpack fasting a little bit more. Before we do that, let's break down, just because we do have such a diverse audience. Some are deep into health and wellness. Some are just good at it because they're athletes, etc. They're business owners or leaders. Let's talk about gut and microbiome. Can you just explain it in very layman's terms? I think some people think gut and that just means like you're bloated or something hanging over your pants. What is the technical scientific gut meaning?
Yeah. Good question. So the technical term of the gut is basically your gastrointestinal system, which starts at the mouth, ends at the anus, right? But for the conversation that we're having, it's really more about the small and large intestine, which is where most of our bacteria reside. There are some in the stomach, but mostly in the small and large intestine. So those guys occupy about 50% of your cells, believe it or not. And the way that I like to explain it is, and you probably saw that in the book, is think of your gut and the trillions of organisms that live in your gut as like it's a company or a factory, right? And you have these workers, and the workers are those organisms. And another word for those organisms is probiotics, which everybody knows, right? You take a probiotic supplement. Well, all that is the actual live organisms packaged in a pill, right? So if you think about a factory and you have those probiotics, well, those are workers and they need to feed in order to produce, right? Because that's you want products being made. So the food that they eat, those are called prebiotics. And prebiotics is usually plant-based fibers, because that's their favorite food. So I always say, I have a favorite food, you have a favorite food, well, they have a favorite food. And their favorite food is plant-based fibers. So, and the reason why is because they digest them and they make things with them. So some of these things include neurotransmitters, which we talked about, but other things include these, it's almost like soldiers and protective barriers in the gut, so that we prevent toxins from leaking out of our gut into our bloodstream. So they're making all of this stuff. They're making vitamins too. So if you have enough of these really good guys making this stuff, then you're fine. But if you're not feeding them what they need to eat, right, they start to die off and they're not going to do that stuff that you need. And then you're going to start having a leaky gut, for example, and just bloating and all the gut issues that we have. So those things that they produce, they're called postbiotics. So the probiotics are the organisms, the prebiotics is what they eat, and the postbiotics is what they make. And we need all three. I would even say, if we're going to come down to what is the most important, I would say postbiotics are the most important aspect of all of this.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you can't make postbiotics without the prebiotics and the probiotics.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And she lists out all like suggested foods. Like she makes this really easy of like how you can incorporate these certain things in your diet. And it's a simple protocol. And yet the effects, I think you said you had a protocol for every one of your COVID patients and you didn't lose a single one. Is that correct?
No, we, so my, I don't know if you read that part, but my husband was an ICU doctor, and they early on didn't really know what was going on. They were giving these medications to different, like to battle different things basically. So at the time we didn't really know, but when we kind of put two and two together that what was protecting children was this bacteria, I started recommending probiotics, very high dose probiotics with this bacteria in it, along with high dose vitamin D and zinc, which we already knew, right? A lot of people are taking D and zinc, but I think the missing factor was the probiotic with bifidobacterium, because bifidobacterium's function is to downregulate the inflammatory pathways that get activated when someone gets COVID. So if you don't have enough bifidobacterium in your body, you're just not going to be able to mount enough of a fight against this inflammation. And the inflammation is what's actually causing people to get even sicker or unfortunately pass away. Children, because they have so much of this, they're able to downregulate those pathways right away, and then they don't have that buildup of inflammation. So that's what I think protected them. And early on, I thought, people thought I was crazy because I was really advocating for this, but it's been 4 years now. I've talked to so many other GI doctors and other doctors that kind of put two and two together. A lot of doctors were recommending ivermectin, because what we thought was the mechanism of action of ivermectin was that it was also downregulating these inflammatory pathways that I just mentioned. But one doctor actually did a study on the actual mechanism, and what she found in her patients who took ivermectin was that it actually increases bifidobacterium levels in the gut.
Okay.
So she put two and two together, that was what was helping people, is because it was increasing bifidobacterium, and in return, the bifidobacterium was, downregulating those pathways.
Hi there. This is Laura Mahoney from LuxNeuro, Neurofeedback and Counseling. We are bringing you stories of transformation each podcast. Imagine how we can transform your life. Long COVID. I had COVID a few years ago. It was the worst, during and especially after. I never fully recovered from COVID until I started neurofeedback. It turns out I had long COVID, which for me meant napping 2 to 4 times a day. It was debilitating, so much so that I lost my life. My relationship suffered, and I even lost the small business that I loved and I owned. I serendipitously found neurofeedback, and it has absolutely transformed my life. After COVID, napping was a part-time job, taking up to 20 hours or more per week of my time. After starting neurofeedback treatments, my fatigue went away, and with it, the napping. I am so happy to say that I am now present in my life and no longer take naps. I love connecting with my family and friends again, and I have time to be with them. I also am now looking for a job, something that I didn't think would ever happen again. Feeling trapped and hopeless in my life has been replaced with a lust for life, and I can't wait to see what my future holds. All thanks to neurofeedback.
So that's crazy stuff, right?
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, crazy that it's a more simple answer than we thought. And you said you didn't lose a single person, correct?
I did not. I had people, so we got COVID, especially in New York. It was pretty early on in March. We published a study in May. And I started telling everyone, all my patients, all my friends, family, because at that point the vaccine wasn't even out yet. There was nothing. People were just it was like a crapshoot, right? Yeah. And I was like, you need to take really high doses of this bifidobacterium probiotic. I had other stuff in there, and really high doses of vitamin D and zinc. And you need to take that for 2 weeks. And everyone was fine. I don't even think I had any patient or friend or family member need to be hospitalized with this protocol.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't listen to me, and they thought I was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my second question, because again, we're just so conditioned to listen to the news and listen to this, and it's like that's probably the last place you should go.
I have
And
family members question me, like family members that knew me well. And they were like, well, why isn't this on the news? I'm like, I don't know why it's not on the news. I'm trying to get it on the news. And then there was all this frustration from other doctors that had the same problem. They were like, we tried to get this on the news and nobody wanted to listen.
Yeah. This is another message. I don't care what industry you're in, you get your tribe around. You get the people that you know and you trust without a doubt that are doing this. I mean, it could be medical advice, it could be stock advice. Like you need your sources, and it's not the news. So, and
even more importantly than that is just be a critical thinker and actually research the stuff, read it. And if it makes sense to you, don't worry about what they're saying, right? Yeah. Just do what makes sense to you and what your gut, no pun intended, go with your gut.
Yeah. Gracefully disrupt status quo. That's not where the answer is. So that's really wild. Well, this is, we talked about your son. When's a good time to have like kids lean into this? Because our, kids are on TikTok and there's all this intel way before, it was available to us in our generation. Like they're asking these questions 12, 13, 14, and they want to know what's a good time for parents listening to like start having this conversation, or like, we discussed modeling it themselves so kiddos see what's going on.
Well, I think modeling is a really important factor because kids aren't really going to do something that you're not doing. So, and I saw this even with my kids. I really just started incorporating healthier eating when they were younger, and they got used to it. And I think there's really any good time, and you kind of just have to cater the conversation to the understanding level, right? So start young. Teach your children about, why it's important to eat these vegetables and plant-based foods. And they may not like it, but this is whatever they see you doing consistently and whatever has been done consistently, whether they like it or not, they will take with them into adulthood. Yeah. They may be a little resistant in the beginning, but we all turn out to be what we were conditioned and what we saw in our environment. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. So.
Well, I was going to say, you're going to unpack in therapy no matter what. So try to do the right thing, but no matter what, there's therapy coming. So it is what it is. Well, we touched on
eat healthy.
Yes, exactly. We touched on fasting and I think that really does inflammation and then the gut brain connect. Let's unpack that a little bit more, because I think people do confuse that with starvation or just not eating. And there's a difference. Do you want to give us like the watered breakdown on that?
Did you get to that chapter yet? It's chapter 5. Have you gotten to that one?
I'm right there. Oh, and ironically, I always think universe messes with me. I always say God, universe, Madonna. Big Madonna fan. Like I swear messages come through, like do this for the greater good, but universe wants to whoop me with things. So like it comes right on time through my guests. So yes, we're right on the cusp. So for me and for everyone else out there.
Okay. School. I'll try to simplify this. I mean, I hopefully did a good job of simplifying everything in the book so that people can understand it, but I'll try for this conversation too, to make it simple. So when I say fasting, I think it's maybe it's not the best term. It should be really more intermittent eating, right? Because then people are like, oh no, that's not starving. I'm not talking about starving. I'm not talking about, going crazy and doing these like long water fasts. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about restricting your eating times to a certain number of hours a day.
Yeah.
And the reason is, again, we go back to ancestral eating, right? Our ancestors did not have access to grocery stores 24/7. They were out, they were working, they were hunting, they weren't eating all day long. And so our bodies are made that way to thrive. So what I say is, if you've eaten during a certain time period, and optimally for the immune benefits to really kick in, 6 to 8 hours is really what's been studied. Even sometimes, like a little less than 6 hours, but I think it's not something that everyone can do. But 6 to 8 hours, I think, is very good. And if you're eating during a 6 to 8 hour period and you're eating enough, your body has the nutrition that it needs and it's digesting during that time. And then when you're done, your body will work, your gut more particularly will work on other functions. So, but a lot of people will say, but I get hungry. And if I'm hungry, that means my body needs more food. That means I need to nourish it. Well, actually not. If you're eating okay during that time period and you start to get hungry, it doesn't mean that your body needs that nutrition. It's an internal mechanism of like a shift of gears that your body does. And what it is when you study the science, hunger means that your insulin levels have dropped to a low level that your body is now trying to figure out how to fuel cells. So we all know from science in grammar school is glucose cannot enter cells without insulin. Like insulin's like the transporter. It helps to facilitate cells getting glucose. So when we don't have enough insulin and that level drops because we haven't eaten, it's almost our body saying, okay, well, let me figure out, is she going to eat? Because it's much easier for her to eat something. And then whatever, the insulin levels go up and it's easy for me. So it makes you hungry, right? So you do one of two things. You either respond to the hunger by eating and your body's happy because it doesn't have to do hard work and the insulin production comes out and glucose enters the cells. But here's the thing I want to tell people is if you don't eat, that hunger actually goes away. That hunger is just an internal mechanism for your body to shift gears. So instead of releasing insulin, it now releases another hormone, which stimulates glucose production in a different form. And that different form is from our liver. So we have stored glucose in our liver, and it's called glycogen. And glycogen is always in our liver when it's stored almost daily. We accumulate glycogen and it's like a rainy day storage. And so when you don't eat, your body starts to tap into that glycogen storage. Like if you've been hungry, usually you go to bed, right? If you're like, say you ate, I'm just giving an example. Say you ate around 7 and you go to bed at 10, and you're a little hungry when you go to bed, right? But while you're sleeping, you're obviously not eating. Your body has started to tap into that glycogen now. And then when you wake up, you're usually not hungry because now your body's fueling through that glycogen that it burned to go to cells. But then the beauty is, and this is great for people who want to lose weight because they all want to do ketosis, right? So the beauty is after about 14 hours of fasting, your body now has run out of glycogen, right? You're not getting glucose. You're not getting glycogen. It ran out. It now needs to find another source for cells. So it starts to go to fat and it starts to burn those fat cells and those turn into ketones. And ketones are a really good source of fuel. They're actually the best source of fuel. And so many people love ketosis because they're like, I feel great. I'm, energetic. And so ketosis from fasting then starts to fuel your cells with those fat cells. But here's one thing I wanted to mention is I know a lot of people do keto, like high fat, high protein, and they feel great because the ketosis is great and it's a great source of fuel. But over time, if you're not eating enough vegetables or plant-based foods, you're going to start feeling not so great and your gut bacteria are going to start to die off, the good ones anyway, because they're not being fed. So yes, you can do keto, but please do keto with, low carb and no vegetables. So ketosis is great. Keto without vegetables is not so great.
Boom. For all my CrossFitting fellow meatheads, there you go. I tried the whole paleo thing. My body never flicked over. Wasn't even close to just doing the meat thing. And my favorite when people say, yeah, I'm keto, I do the keto diet. And they're like, I'm like, well, you don't eat vegetables. They're like, well, no, the things I eat the vegetables. And I'm like, what? How is that even a thing like that? Who told you that? Like what influencer posted that and then you just reverberated? Yeah. That's not what it is.
Yeah. And they're partly right because the ketosis from eating keto is great.
Yeah.
But, if you're not introducing those plant-based foods after, 2-3 months, you're really not feeding those guys. They're dying off and you might look great because you lost weight, but it's going to catch up with you eventually. And also it's not really sustainable. I don't know anybody that eats high fat and protein all the time. And like, I don't know. I don't like extreme diets, honestly.
Well, I was going to say there's cost benefit analysis here. Whatever your diet goals are or athletic goals, you still have to live life. Like you have X numbers of days. So if you're never going to eat popcorn at the movie theater or you're never going to have cotton candy at the circus or whatever, like, is that worth it? Like, I don't know. Like I think there's a larger combo there. I did want to show this timeline of fasting. This is, you can't really see if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. I'm leaving my mic. This is just a good example. I'm not really putting up so you can see and take notes. This is just a good example of how she breaks it down so eloquently, where you can, understand it and see visuals and make something otherwise complex into, a simple situation that you can easily follow. How now, because you talked about the importance of digest and rest and letting your gut chill and just recuperate. How does that directly impact the brain function? Because you can kind of talk about like getting hangry and the hormonal situation. Let's lean into that a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about like the neurotransmitters, like what's going on when you're not digesting?
Sure. What do you think the people need to hear? I'll follow your lead.
Well, I think mental health is such a big topic right now. So yes, so if you're digesting all the time, that's what your gut's doing. It's not working on other stuff. And it has other stuff that it needs to do. So it's like it almost gets backed up. When you're super busy and you're supposed to do a million things and they just keep piling up because you're doing like other stuff. Well, that's what happens in the gut if it's constantly digesting. So intermittent fasting helps with that, because here are some of the things that your gut actually can do. It can make neurotransmitters. I'll just talk about a couple of them that people know. Serotonin, everybody knows, right? Here's what people might not know is to produce serotonin in your body, to make it, you need a precursor protein, right? An amino acid, and that's called tryptophan. And I'm just going to get a little technical. So tryptophan turns into another product called 5-hydroxytryptophan, which then becomes serotonin. So I'm saying this because a lot of people take that supplement, 5-HTP, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan, because they're like, oh, that helps make serotonin. But here's the thing. You need the tryptophan to make the serotonin, and tryptophan is only present in foods. Our body cannot make tryptophan. So you have to eat tryptophan-rich foods in order to make serotonin. Some people are on medications that help with depression, for example. What you're doing there is you're not making serotonin. You're just allowing your body to not break it down as quickly. So it's helping, but you're not making what you need. So yes, you might need medications, but let's also help your body make what it needs, right? So that's one thing. Foods that can help with making serotonin are tryptophan-rich foods. There's a whole list in the book. But a few ones that people know are walnuts. Most nuts actually have tryptophan. Like walnuts and pecans are really rich in tryptophan.
Okay.
Tofu, soybeans, edamame, they also have tryptophan. Bananas have tryptophan. Eggs have tryptophan. There's a whole list of foods that are put in the book of stuff that you can eat to increase. That's one. Another neurotransmitter is called GABA. And GABA, a lot of people, maybe they know, maybe they don't. It's our neurotransmitter that helps us to relax. And it is just a calming neurotransmitter, but it also helps us stay asleep. If we're not eating foods that have the precursor of GABA, which is another protein called glutamate or glutamic acid, we're not going to be able to make GABA. So what's going to happen if you don't eat that type of food? You're going to be anxious and you're going to not feel yourself. So those foods are present in spinach, for example. Spinach is high in glutamic acid, or other foods like grains are also high in glutamic acids. Also eggs, also walnuts. There's a lot of repetition in certain foods. Like walnuts, in my opinion, are the best food. They have so much. Yeah. So those are two things that if your gut's not, if it's not working on these functions and it's working on digesting all the time, it has this backup problem and it doesn't make what it needs to make. And there are other neurotransmitters that I won't get into, but it's almost like a backup in an assembly line at the factory, and you don't want that, right?
Yeah.
So that affects our mental health, and I've experienced that when I don't eat well.
Yeah. Well, it really does all work together, and you can get into like sunshine and all the things that really help. I just encourage people to listen to this piece of the conversation and then go dig in, because there's always a space for medication. I like the Eastern Western approach, and everything's custom. We're all individual. And before you get on these medications for a lifetime, forever, try something else. Try changing your diet. Get a second opinion. Just do something where you're really doing your own due diligence and questioning your own better way, just in case, because you want to avoid taking something forever. And again, back to like our initial part of our conversation, these are businesses. They're designed to get you on them. There's a space for it, and I'm here for if it's needed. And you better start asking questions and digging in and doing your own research and advocating for yourself, because it might not be something you need, or it could be something you could cure or address just by changing your diet. And I think that's hard for people to believe, but it's that you hear to hear first from the doctor. There you go.
We've been misled. We've been misled to believe that our bodies aren't able to heal on their own. And sometimes we need help. I'm not opposed to medications. I mean, I'm trained to prescribe medications, but we need to move away from them being first line. Or at least, an adjunct to a change in our diet. And then we take the medications, and hopefully we take them temporarily. Some people need them longer, but at least we can help our body kind of heal on its own too.
Yeah. Well, and the empowering feeling, I think, this is kind of like an overarching mental health thing. Like when you know you can have the power to fix something yourself, know your own body, take care of yourself. I don't know how that's measured on like, what matters scale. But when you feel that sense of authority and that sense of like, oh, I knew what it was that, and I addressed it and positively changed it, that changes everything for every other step you move in life. I'm assuming you felt that multiple times in your own world.
Absolutely 100% agree with you on that. And again, why I wrote the book, because I could tell you, little bits and clips of stuff, but you're not going to really be convinced unless you understand the concept and you are empowered to make the change yourself. And when you do make that change, it's really empowering, and it's really nice to see that you were successful. So yes, I'm just a provider of tools for you, but I can't change what you do. And I think you're right. I think being empowered to change and seeing a change is very satisfying.
Oh, absolutely. That carries it. Then you can make changes in your relationship and your workout and whatever matters to you. It's wild how much power we do have. We're not in control of a lot. I always say God, universe, Madonna. We just got to show up, be intentional, especially my high achievers. Like, we're going to fix it. We're going to change. We're going to do all the things. But sometimes you just got to let go and show up and advocate yourself. I have a million more questions, but we'll wrap it there. This is usually my final question. I'm curious to hear your answer. What is success to you?
I don't want to sound cliche, so I'm going to try not to sound cliche, but it really is to me being happy with what my decisions are, and whether that's being kind of out of the box and going against certain things, but really just going with what I believe is right. That's what success is to me. And having, a good support system. Social connections to me are more success than being successful in your career.
Amen. Write that down. That's so, again, universe whoops on me. We were just talking about support and asking for help in my meeting prior. So it's like, you get it. Universe is trying to tell you. I couldn't agree more. And you're absolutely in line with our Turmeric and Tequila family, because it's about questioning a better way and telling the truth, like telling your truth, whatever your truth is, and standing in it, because that in itself will whoop on your mental health before anything else. Where do we find you? Give us handles, Instagrams, anything you want to share?
Sure. I do have an Instagram account. It's Dr. spelled out, Doctor Christine B. And yeah, if anybody's interested, the book's on Amazon. It's been doing really well. I'm actually surprised that it did as well as it did, but I guess people are really hungry for the info. So yeah, thank you.
Let's go. I'm here for the cliches, all the puns, like lean in. I'm not surprised at all. We have, again, our young people are educated consumers. I think they do question a better way. It gives me so much hope for our future. And I know that makes me sound old, but it's all like they're out here and they're doing big things. So I think this is incredible. And I love that you are on the doctor side, telling the truth and poking the bear in some capacity, because that's what we need. And I know people will lean in and trust you and listen all the more just for that. So there's my non-doctorly advice. Just put it out there.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Go check out Dr. Bishara. This is a great book. Like I said, I did read the fasting. I'm right on the other side of that, but it's been great. I've done health and wellness forever, and I'm getting tons of nuggets out of this. So if you're well-versed in these things, read it. If you're brand new, read it. It's really great. I love what she's got going on, and TNT will keep in touch with you. I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, LuxNeuro, Neurofeedback and Counseling. LuxNeuro wants to meet you. If you're ready to transform your life, visit them at LuxNeuro.com and schedule a consultation. Declan James watches. Get your wrist blinged out, because this is almost like a workout right here. So it's multifaceted. Dr. Bishara, thank you so much. I hope you check back in with us, but we're wishing you all success in the meantime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.